Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Contemplating Life on the Pale Blue Dot. My name is Greg Pfeiffer and I currently live in Wollongong, which is 70 kilometres south of Sydney on the coast, New South Wales in Australia. However, I grew up in Canberra, which is the capital city of Australia, and it's inland a bit, about 3 hours drive from here. During the 60s to 80s, there were 3 deep space tracking stations just south of Canberra: Tidbinbilla, Honeysuckle Creek and Aurora Valley. Honeysuckle Creek should be more famous and well known, as contrary to what you may have seen in the movie The Dish, Honeysuckle Creek was the tracking station that received the images from the moon when Neil Armstrong first set foot on the moon, took those first steps. It received the images and transmitted them and broadcast them around the world. And a little quirk of fate, because it was received in Australia before being sent over to the USA for everyone else, we actually got to see everything about 8 seconds before everybody else. The Aurora Valley and Honeysuckle Creek tracking stations have closed. However, the Tidbinbilla Deep Space Tracking Station is still in operation. And one of its most amazing feats currently involves its main antenna, which is the 70-metre antenna, and that is communicating with the Voyager 2 spacecraft. Voyager 2 was launched in August 1977 and has been operating somehow ever since. It is well past what they expected its lifespan would be, and it's just under 20 billion kilometres from the Earth. Just to give you an idea, the Earth is about 150 million kilometres from the Sun, so Voyager 2 is about 20 billion kilometres. Now, light takes about 8.5 minutes to get from the Sun to Earth. The signal from Tidbinbilla to Voyager 2 takes about 18.5 hours. Voyager 2 actually sends a signal back and it's received at Tidbinbilla, again taking 18.5 hours to come back. Now, the dish on, or the antenna on Voyager 2 is only about 3.6 metres in diameter. So here we are on Earth, aiming at a 3.5 metre target 20 billion kilometres away, and we managed to get a signal there. And we also managed to somehow receive a signal back that is so incredibly weak. It has travelled so far from this, I think it's a 55 watt generator up on Voyager 2. It is absolutely miraculous we are able to do so. It is just something astounding, and I'm amazed by it every time I go and look and see that on the Deep Space Network website to see we are communicating with Voyager 2. It's just one of mankind's great achievements. However, it's the sister spacecraft Voyager 1 that plays the story for this podcast. Voyager 1 was actually launched after Voyager 2 in September 1977, and its mission was to get to Saturn, Jupiter and Neptune and document them, and it completed that in around 1980, late 1980. Around that time, famed astronomer and author Carl Sagan requested NASA to turn Voyager around and take a photograph of the Earth, to look back at the Earth and take a picture. At that time, NASA didn't want to do so because it meant looking back towards the Sun. They feared the Sun would be too bright and it would damage the cameras, the very sensitive cameras on Voyager 1. So they didn't do it. Anyway, Voyager 1 was sent off to travel as far as it could and keep going. And eventually, in around 1990, they did decide they would take this photograph back of the Earth. So on 14 February 1990, Voyager 1 was turned back to face the Earth and towards the Sun, and using these rather primitive by our standard cameras, it took a photograph of the Earth, and we believe the moon probably got in there as well. The photograph taken is about 640,000 pixels. The Earth takes up less than 1 pixel of that 640,000 pixels that comprise the photograph. The photograph shows the Earth as just a pale blue dot, but in this beam of sunlight. It's an absolutely wonderful photograph. But that is it. That is all that is in the photograph. It's taken from about 6.5 billion kilometres away. A phenomenal distance that to even capture the Earth with the technology back then in the photograph was amazing, but the Earth is just so tiny. The biggest thing to look at that picture though is to realise from that distance there is nothing else in that photograph. The sun is out of range of that photograph, it's down the bottom, but nothing else is there. There's simply Earth and the moon. Nothing else shows up. So that vast expanse of space, there was basically nothing. And the reality is that most of space is an incredible nothingness of distances that we can't really comprehend. It's a great photograph for often putting things into perspective again of what we are and where we fit into the universe, this tiny speck of it, and matters and life and death and how important we make things. It's a great perspective. Carl Sagan wrote a book in 1994 called The Pale Blue Dot, and I want to read something that he wrote from that book that really encapsulates these thoughts well. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that, in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbour life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes. Settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. Carl Sagan, 1994. And I think this was written well before the era of social media, influences, the celebrity culture that has grown. It's a great way to put a lot of things that we deem important into perspective, and it does ask a couple of great questions. What is important? Why is ego so important? Power, the negative side of life, it puts into importance that really it's so unimportant. What we should be doing is looking after each other. We're trying to make this a better place, but so often we look at things and look at people trying to destroy other people, countries, wars, the atrocities that we deal upon one another. The present state at the moment, where there are people worried that some despot is going to launch a nuclear war and what that could do. And it will come down to why. What were all the motivations that made this happen? What was the importance of it? And in the end, does it really matter? And I just absolutely love that photograph and the thinking of it. It just puts everyone back into a perspective that a lot more people should go and have a look at that photograph and really have a think on things. We have to look after each other because, as far as we can tell, no one is going to come and help us out if we botch this up. If we stuff the planet, we haven't got a plan B. Yes, we're talking about Mars. Yes, there's plans, but at the moment, it's not happening. So we really do need to look after this one bit of dust that is ours. It's the one that we have. At the moment, we don't have another one. So these are the sort of thoughts and the background and looking at this funny thing called life. It's one of the most improbable things that it should happen. And why did it happen on this planet? You can go through your ideologies and faith and philosophy to think, why is there life on this remote corner of the universe of a very insignificant planet? It's absolutely astounding that we are all here doing what we're doing. It's a wonderful, great gift. Life is one of the most amazing, improbable, silly, complicated, wonderful, inspiring things. It just shouldn't happen, and yet it did, and here we all are. And just to wonder who actually takes time to think back at the great improbability and how has this happened? How did we get here? Really? Yes, we'll have various scholars or answers in religion, but it's just, if you want to let your mind just expand a bit and contemplate, why has that speck of dust been the one that shows sign of life? It's the great unanswerable question. And it's wonderful that we do have unanswerable questions. Questions are wonderful things. Questions stimulate thought. Questions are what make us grow. Questions expand our knowledge. To be someone who questions, to someone who learns, to be someone who grows, to someone who thinks. These are our greatest gifts. Knowledge, thought-provoking. We can think. We are conscious. We are aware. These are wonderful gifts that we just ignore day by day, and yet they're not necessarily bestowed upon millions of other creatures, billions of creatures on our planet. So this gives you an idea of just some of the places we look to go in this podcast, and to also look at some of the things that were mentioned in the quote from Carl Sagan. Sometimes we go, why aren't we so nice to one another? Why do we do the cruel thing? What is our motivation? It is a great thing, it can be a dark thing. What motivates life? What motivates people to do the things they do? So in these podcasts, basically, I want to be asking some questions, exploring some ideas, and stimulating thought. It is something I've always enjoyed in doing in the field, in working and associating with people, is one, listening to people who know more than I do about something, where there's something I could learn, and listening to people who stimulate thought. And similarly, I like doing that with people interactions. I love to stimulate thought. It's one of the greatest things we can do, and I really enjoy doing it. So this podcast will be an opportunity for me to ask some questions, look at some knowledge, and hopefully stimulate some thought. I won't guarantee there'll be as many answers as there are questions, but that's okay. A lot of the answers will be things that you'll need to come up with for yourself, and maybe everybody will have a different answer. That is fine. I hope to get some feedback. I'd love to hear at time your thoughts and what your thoughts on the questions are, what your answers are, to help stimulate discussion. The podcast will be parts of my experience, parts of readings, and I hope to get some other people on as well to talk about something in their life that is really worth, that there's a lesson, there's a story. I'm a great one for people who have lessons and people who have stories. So hopefully we get to tell some stories with some other people. The next episode I have planned though is, I've got the title of it is called Unpretty Hatred. It will look at something that has been relevant lately to me, which unfortunately is the concept and the emotion of hatred and that behaviour in people. It will also tie in with looking at superficiality, judgmentalism, and going through life as somebody who wasn't one of the beautiful people. So it will be very personal and could be quite raw, that one. But I hope it does will educate and stimulate some thought in it. So I hope we all come back to listen to episode 2, and I look forward to your company then. Thank you.